The Wonderbirds Show, 4:30 YouTube and Facebook, and today, flying into our nest, is the inspirational actor Mark Beer to tell us all about his latest company and show. We'll see you there. And there he is!
Hey!
Darling!
Oh,
Hello.
how lovely to see
Hello.
you.
Darling, it's so exciting to have you in our nest. And I just want to say, you are an iconic actor who has had a disability that has never got in your way. It's not even an issue. You don't stop. You've started a new company, which is going to be inclusive. And just, I mean, tell us a bit about you, because it's so amazing. You're so wonderful.
Well, thank you very much for having me, ladies, and it's lovely to be here.
Pleasure.
I have been working professionally now for 38 years this year.
Oh, so you're almost a grown up.
Almost.
Hopefully not.
Never completely.
We never grow up.
No one should ever grow up.
So, darling, tell us, how did your career and acting and everything else begin?
Well, basically, it started when I was 17. I was at a college for people with disabilities in Cheltenham, and I studied there from sort of 16 to 18. And at 17, I was spotted at the Cheltenham Literary Festival by a theatre director who brought me to London to play the lead in a play called Chairperson at Riverside Studios in Hammersmith. And from there, it kind of escalated to going on to do more theatre and more telly. And by the time I was 20, I started doing telly, and I did telly from about 2020 to about 28, 29, doing lots of different programs and presenting programs and then acting in drama series and so.
And it's never stood in your way, has it?
I wouldn't say it's never.
Never, not quite.
I would say I have been very lucky, but I've also worked very hard by breaking barriers. But when I was young, at such a young age, I didn't see any barriers. I had no fear. You don't when you're younger. You just kind of go with the flow. And I took absolutely everything that was offered to me. So whether it be theatre, whether it be telly, whether it be radio, I did everything that was given to me. And
how fabulous.
Did you tell us about your new company?
Well, the new company I set up as part of during the pandemic, really, because lots of friends and colleagues and actors and actresses that I'd worked with over the years said, Mark, you know, you've got so much experience. You should either set up an agency for disabled actors, or you should set up your own company. And I thought about it for a while, and it's called Drama Cop Theatre Company, which is the Gaelic word for drama. And I thought about it and thought, no, I don't really want to negotiate contracts and deal with that. I've never been very good with money. So I just thought, no, I'll set up the company instead. And we've just done our first production of Alan Bennett's Talking Heads at Chelsea Theatre in London. And a lovely lady called Kathy Connick played Leslie from Her Big Chance, and I played Graham Whittaker in Chip and Sugar. And that came to an end. And very kindly, they've asked us back.
Yay!
Great stuff.
Thank you. I'm going for a meeting with them after I finish Scrooge at the end of November to bring it back in next year.
Wow, tell us about Scrooge, Mark.
Well, I've always been told from a very early age that, I was 24 playing a 16-year-old in a drama series for the BBC. And the casting directors that see me or do self-tapes for say, oh, you're too young. I'm in that age group where I'm not young and I'm not old. And so therefore, they keep saying I'm too young for the parts that I want to play. So I thought, no, I have to do something about this. So the next production I'm working on is a production of Christmas Carol,
And also, when you said that you're too young for some roles and too old for others, we're all in the same boat. Just saying.
Yeah.
Well, I'm just too young for most of them, darling.
Oh my
to be
goodness.
honest.
Actually.
And also, as we're pausing fleetingly, I just want to explain. Dee is always glamorous, but she has an eye infection, which is why she's got her dark glasses and faux fur on today.
Yes. Yeah, exactly. No, I'm not always like this.
I know that he has an eye infection because I've seen the program before.
Ah.
Been going on for ages. I don't believe it anymore, Mark. Anyway, I think she just doesn't want to. I think it's probably not her at all, actually.
You see?
Well, actually, no, I just love the dark glasses. Any excuse.
It's a very good thing at this time in the morning. That's what I say. The next project that I'm working on is A Christmas Carol, and it's going to be taking place at the Actors Church in Covent Garden. And the dress rehearsal is the 22nd, but the children from the Millbrook Children's Home, which is what we're raising the money for, will come and see it on the Wednesday, and then we close on the 26th, which is the Saturday.
Fantastic.
Wonderful. And also, Mark, you've worked with people like Jude Law, haven't you, about inclusion and disability?
Yes, I worked with Jude many moons ago when he was working on a film called Gattaca, which was a sci-fi, and he, in that storyline, became disabled. And I remember having a conversation with him at the time, saying, can this character be played by a disabled actor? And he said no, because you get to see the character running around.
Yes, it's very interesting, isn't it? This sort of the line between saying it should be played by a disabled actor or it shouldn't be, because now I think now as well with kids, I mean, you must see it all the time now, that are children now treated with disabilities, are they treated so much different than they were when you were a child?
Very much so. I mean, in answer to the first part of the question, I believe that the whole issue about casting somebody, whether they're disabled or not, should come into the question of whether they're a good enough actor.
Yeah, I agree.
And I do think fundamentally that disabled actors should always be seen for disabled roles. And 9 times out of 10, if you can find one, and if one that is good enough, and there's plenty more now than there was 38 years ago. 38 years ago, when I started, there was myself and Nabil Shaban, who set up Freya Theatre Company. That was 2 of us. And now there are far more. So there's far more to choose from.
Well, it's so interesting, Mark, because I work a lot. I do a series with Lee Ridley, and you know, who's the Lost Voice guy. Do you know who I mean?
Yes.
Yeah. And so I've got to know Lee very, very well. And I think his story as well is, I mean, gobsmacking when you think he can't speak. And he's got a radio series. Work that one out. But he went to university. He did all of those things. I think he's about 35. But everyone wrote him off. But his parents knew that inside this little body was a very smart. He's a very, very sharp cookie.
And he knows how to choose his words carefully. Has to choose them deliberately.
Yes.
Unlike everyone else who just opens their mouth and speaks, Lee can actually mentally structure his conversation so that it works very much in his favour.
Yeah, that is true. That's an advantage. In the series, he has a head voice and his own voice, and the head voice is always saying what he really thinks. like, oh my goodness me, I can't stand that person, and you hear him say, "Oh, hello, nice to meet you." So it's exactly that, and he's written it as well. So I think it's very, very interesting how, you know, disability works as well on screen, because I think especially being in a wheelchair. I remember seeing Bette Midler many years ago. Do you remember her doing that wheelchair thing with all of her dancers? And I remember thinking, I don't understand why she's doing this. Being a huge fan of hers, I still found it quite offensive.
It was not seen as offensive. Back then it was funny. And it is terribly funny. She's a terribly funny lady. But the thing is, it's the difference between somebody laughing with you or laughing at you. It's any comedic actor or actress. If the audience are behind you, and Lee is a really strong case in point. He's turned his disability into an element of comedy.
I think so. When you first worked for the BBC, were you one of the first disabled people to be taken on by the BBC?
Yes, I was. I did a program called Playdays, which was free school children's program back in the end of the 80s. And again, I was the first disabled actor to play a regular character for drama series.
So really, you have paved the way for a lot of other disabled performers coming now, because to have your voice and I love earlier you said, you know, you don't hold back, you're quite forthright. And I think you're amongst a nest of people who are also the same. You know, it's so important. And because of you and other people paving the way, there is acceptance, you know, creativity, inclusion, which is absolutely vital, because we're all together and we are all human beings, and that's what divides everyone all the time. On whatever level, it's actually we're just human beings. Everybody be together and be creative.
If I'd have stopped and thought about what I was doing at the time, Harriet, my lovely, I probably wouldn't be sitting here now. It's the fact that I was so young and inexperienced, and just people were throwing things at me that I did everything. I didn't.
Thank God.
Yeah, I didn't stop to think about disability. I didn't stop to think about access. I didn't stop to think about anything. I mean, most of my early career, especially in the theatre, I was carried upstairs like a bag of potatoes.
But I was thinking today on all the new transport, there's accessibility now on all new lines. It's part of our normal life, as it should be.
But then when I was touring around the country back in the 80s and 90s, I was in the back of the guards van. There was no accessible seats.
Appalling. Yeah. And how have times changed because of people like you? Thank you.
Mark, you know, I think you should write your story. I mean, just saying just now, you know, about being like a sack of potatoes and put in the guards van. I mean, you should write. This would be a fantastically funny and moving film of how things were.
Yes. I mean, I will eventually. I will get there eventually. Yeah. I think, you know, when you carry on working, and I've been very fortunate to do that, you don't tend to look back. You look forward. You look what's coming next, and so on and so on. And it isn't until I'm being interviewed, like today, that I kind of go, "Oh my God, I've done quite a lot, really."
You have. You've done a hell of a lot. I also read that you escaped to a place near Stratford-upon-Avon where you were brought up. Is that your happy place, would you say?
Oh, yes. I would definitely say so. My mummy lives in a little place called Henley and Arden in Warwickshire.
Lovely.
And I auditioned for the RSC twice. Been seen by the lovely Gregory Duran, who's a lovely man. And he was going to cast me in Richard the Third, but there's another company at the same time doing All Well That Ends Well, and they wanted an actor that could do both roles.
I'd love to see you in panto, Mark, in a zooming wheelchair.
Well, I was very fortunate. Yet again, another first. In 2003, I did panto at Stratford East, in the Theatre Royal Stratford East. And they've never had a disabled actor before in their history.
Wow.
I went to drama school there, Mark. I went to East 15, which was, Joan Littlewood's protege, Maggie Berry. Yeah. Fabulous.
I mean, a wonderful building and a lovely, lovely company and a lovely director, Kerry Michael. I had a brilliant time, but I have never, ever worked so hard. You know, I was, very, very busy, let's put it.
Well, the new year, darling, 2023 has to be the beginning, as Debbie has said, of your new piece about yourself because it's wonderful, moving, and funny, and we all need to hear it.
Okay.
And
we
now,
want to.
interestingly enough, Mark, I'm going to throw this one at you. Who would you get to play you?
Obviously, somebody incredibly intelligent and incredibly gorgeous.
Handsome, gorgeous. Go on. Apart from that.
It would be quite difficult. It would be very difficult because I would really want a young person with a disability to play me when I was younger.
Of course.
Mm-hmm.
It would be quite hard to find, I think. I've realised over the time that it's not just about disability, or it's about what you look like as well.
Well, I'm sure there's a gorgeous disabled actor out there who could play you.
I'm sure we'll find one. I'm sure.
Yeah.
Can we do the casting process?
Of course you can.
Yes, gorgeous and intelligent, darling.
As long as I can play me when I'm older, that's fine.
Yes, darling, of course. Of course.
My ex-partner recently had a stroke, and he's been in a wheelchair, and it's very interesting because I'd never actually pushed a wheelchair before, and it was incredibly heavy. And also, I mean, he said to me as I was wheeling him out of the hospital, he said, "I've come in here for a stroke. I don't want to end up in casualty with 2 broken legs."
Thank you so much, darling. Will you come back and see us again, please, in the new year with your new information?
I would love to come back.
Yes.
Oh,
yes.
Anytime.
And the casting process. Don't forget that.
I won't forget that. I'll write the book first, but then
yes.
And then it but obviously,
Mark,
all of you in it now.
Thank you, darling.
Thank you, darling.
Take
We
care.
love you. Thank you.
Bye, darling.
See you soon.
Bye.
Bye.
What an inspirational man.
And
Really
well done, Harriet. A lovely, lovely guest.